reason I wanted to discuss this, and it came up in my feed or in my email actually, was because Lancet journal, Lancet, major medical journal, probably one of the more prominent medical journals out there when talking about peer-reviewed medical scientific research and evidence and things like that. So I'm going to talk about this. An article that was put out by them, a better evidence needed for preventing pediatric migraine, and it kind of comes on the heels of a journal neurology, and actually it's the American Academy of Neurology and the American Headache Society putting out new guidelines. Here we have in August 14th, 2019, Practice Guidelines Update Summary Pharmacologic Treatment for Pediatric Migraine Prevention. And you get links to these if you want, like I'm reading the title here, if you want links and read for yourself, verify what I'm saying, or help somebody, a friend or family member out that may be dealing with such health issues or has a child, God forbid, that's dealing and suffering from such a health issue. You can get those TWD in the comments on the Facebook Live. If you watch this on Facebook, you can do it there. You cannot do that on YouTube. You'll have to go into the description on YouTube, find the link to the website, and then you'll get the link that will shoot you over to my website, thewilddoc.com. And then you can get these articles and these research studies. So I try my best to get you guys the evidence and information so that you can be equipped yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. But the reason I want to talk about it is because better evidence needed for preventing pediatric migraines. Migraines, I think, affect like 5% of children under the age of 14 years of age, if I do recall. So quite a prevalent condition. But condition that also takes kids out of their daily lives. Their quality of life is drastically hindered. It affects parents' lives. Many parents have to stay home from work, that type of thing. So lots of burden there. They show significant burdens in cost, tens of thousands of dollars, literally expense increase if somebody deals with migraine headaches. And that's in adults, of course, but even children, missed days of school. Had a little boy, young man. Testimony, we get the link there. I think Ashley put that in the links if you TWD in the comments here on Facebook. And you get a link to, young girl Porter, another little boy, both young children dealing with migraine headaches. Boy would miss baseball, and little girl actually dealt with a migraine headache 28 days straight. And it took us about 3 adjustments, and we got her nervous system balanced. And I think one of the articles I actually linked to, I don't have it sitting here in front of me, but one of the articles I linked to was Autonomic Dysfunction in Childhood Migraines. And I think it's a really good article from the research aspect, again, journal neurology, getting you that. But it's a really good study because it allows us to dive into what causes migraine headaches, which is a dysfunction in the nervous system. They see autonomic nervous system dysfunction, both in the hypersympathetic responses as well as hyperparasympathetic responses. And with Porter, the little girl, we did a heart rate variability. She was high in both. So I knew I needed to address both areas of her spine. But a lot of times when it's spontaneously coming on like that, and this little girl, like no signs, symptoms of it, then suddenly starts bedridden, vomiting, severe migraine headache, 28 days straight, mind you. And she had seen and visited pediatric neurologists at Vanderbilt, what's considered one of the best hospitals in our region, and if you watch the testimony and watch the mother, just go through what they did exactly what the research shows. So literally the hospital, Vanderbilt, who in that hospital is considered, a research-based, evidence-based, facility or hospital or medical, facility. And they did exactly what the research shows that they can do, which is nothing. And it's sad. That's all that has. And that's the kind of the discussion. So the practice guidelines that the American Academy of Neurology, I believe it is, American Academy of Neurology and the American Headache Society, they put out, and here's the results from that. Again, you get the links to WD in the comments. Recommendations: the majority of randomized controlled trials studying the efficacy of preventive medications for pediatric migraine fail to demonstrate superiority to placebo. Fail to show or demonstrate any benefit over placebo. So that's the medications. So prevention of migraines in children, there is no drug available out there that actually works for migraines. So that is the evidence. And literally the mother was told by the pediatric neurologist there at Vanderbilt that we're going to put her on meds and she'll probably need to take them for the rest of her life, and we don't know what's causing it. We don't know. We don't know anything about this. So literally the best neurologist, supposedly. It's just sad. It's just really, really, truly sad. And it took a friend of hers telling her about me, my office, what I could do for children, and then me texting and reaching out to the mother, and finally got the little girl in here. And literally I'm like, listen, just stick with it. This is what's going on. We took a series of x-rays of her upper cervical spine. She had distortion at the atlas vertebra, especially rotation there, which is one of the most prominent misalignments I see with migraines, because migraines are neurological, and atlas alignment deals more with neurological. Somebody's dealing with like tension headaches. I'm going to look at more of the structural position of the global positioning of the cervical spine, forward head posture, that type of thing, which losses a curve, causes the tension on the muscles. The increased tension on the muscles is created by that forward head positioning, like holding a bowling ball further out in front of you is going to cause the tension of the muscles and drive that tension type headache. We know what causes tension headaches, and that's positioning of the head and neck and upper back. So we can correct that very easily as well. But in migraines, we're looking at a neurological aspect in the joint position of skull, atlas, and C2 especially. Play a huge part in the parasympathetic balances, and I'm talking about one aspect, one cause here primarily. This, it helps a significant portion. I linked to it as well there in the video, or in the research documents. I gave you one. That was back in like 1998. I wish they'd do an updated study on this. I wish they'd give us funding in chiropractic to do studies on pediatric neurology, neurological conditions like migraine headaches, especially since there is no drug that can help it whatsoever. And I will give you, there's evidence of even supplements being superior to placebo, but head-to-head trial between amlodipine, I think it was. Let me look. Amitriptyline. Amlodipine, sorry about that. Amitriptyline. So amitriptyline or chiropractic care, and this is in adults, not children, but amitriptyline versus chiropractic versus amitriptyline and chiropractic. What was really interesting about that study is chiropractic was better than all of them. Which again, doesn't say all that much, except for the fact that it was better than placebo, was better than amitriptyline, which is basically the same as taking a placebo, but you don't get the side effects when taking a placebo. You don't get the side effects of suicidal behavior and ideation. Getting the idea of committing suicide, that's a side effect of the medications. It's oftentimes I've seen in children who are prescribed these medications by their medical physician or neurologist, I see that they get these drugs that cause a side effect of suicidal behavior and ideation, thinking about committing suicide, ideas that the child never had before. Now the child has an idea to commit suicide because of the side effects of these medications, and that, God forbid, that's the last thing any parent would want to happen to their child, but that's the drug regimen, And granted, parents want to do something. I mean, they don't know what to do. I mean, you can hear the desperation in the mom's voice if you watch Porter's testimony and that little boy's testimony, and we kind of combine the two. But chiropractic over the long term, so after the study and then following them over the long term, even after discontinuing care, guess what? Chiropractic still had like a 40% beneficial rate versus the drug-only group. They were down to like 20% sustained improvement, and then like 25% sustained improvement in the drug plus chiropractic. So it was like interesting to me that if the person was on the drugs, you know what, because of the medication, somehow the side effects of the medication were overriding the long-term benefits of chiropractic alone. So it's critically important you're not taking these medications that are disrupting your nervous system, that are causing more disruption and problems, and that's what they cause. And they're no better placebo. So never would that risk of causing your child to have the suddenly become a possible suicide, never would that be an acceptable risk. So I don't know why they even prescribe these medications or even allow it to happen anymore. At best, the medical community should say, you know what, let's just prescribe a sugar pill and let's tell a child that this is going to work, and they would get just as good effects. And that's right there in the August 14th, 2019 practice guidelines update by the American Academy of Neurology. So this isn't my word. This isn't like me, talking negatively about them. It's just I don't like the fact that children are suffering when there could be a possible treatment option that is safe and effective. And pediatric adjustments have been shown very, very safe, and actually safer than like Tylenol and paracetamol that are advised as a acute treatment. So I'm going to read this to you actually. I'll read a couple highlights, and I gave another one there from the Journal of American Medical Association of Neurology from 2017, June of 2017 in there too. I want you guys to read both of those if you would. They're not long. You'll probably see that it's the top half of this page, just a real editorial. It's the most common disabling type of headache among children and adolescents of all the non-communicable diseases, so not like an infection. 5 to 14 years, migraine ranks the third in disease burden effect, along with anxiety disorder and conduct disorders. August 14th, the American Academy, already talked about that. These are the first updates by the American Academy of Neurology, first updates for pediatric migraines in 15 years. And their update is, we have no drugs or treatments or nothing we can really do for them that's any more effective than placebo. That was their update. So to me, it's like I stepped back there for a moment and I thought to myself, wow, it affects, actually, the 5% is a quite significant number of children dealing with this issue. It can lead to psychological problems and failure in school and loss of sports and other health problems in the future, marital stresses. Like migraines just are a huge issue when it comes to the individual level effects. But me, I'm like sitting there 15 years, they haven't updated their guidelines, and nothing has been accomplished by them in 15 years for this subpopulation of our communities that are dealing with something that is devastating. I mean, again, Porter, 28 days straight, mom at home with her and just praying for answers. I mean, that little girl in bed puking. Nothing could be done by them. So I'd say step up chiropractors. It's time for us to take the helm and really steer this ship in public health in the right direction, especially when it comes to neurological things like migraines. Just the results are the results. That's what I tell people. Like, I wish we had better clinical studies, but again, we can't get funding from the FDA and stuff like that. Whenever I talk to chiropractors that are actually involved in research and grant funding and stuff like that, it's very difficult to get their hands on grant funding that allows them to do the large-scale studies or larger scale studies, even though they're, again, adults, 200 and some patients. So let me go on with reading. Ibuprofen, paracetamol in children and adolescents, and triptans in adolescents only are now deemed effective. But again, if you read the studies, they're acute, not preventive. They don't treat the cause. But ibuprofen and paracetamol all have cardiac risks, all have major health problems, that they liver and kidney problems, so the side effects are atrocious, in my opinion. If you're going to think about what your child's life is worth, you don't want them to suffer, but there are better. So just give you some opportunities to think about this. Ginger root, turmeric, both have been shown effective for multiple varying conditions of inflammation and pain over ibuprofen and paracetamol. I don't know why I have a tongue twister on that one. But so those things are alternatives. I've used in temporary cases, and for acute cases, while we're still working on underlying factors and causes like the alignment of the spine, I've used passion flower, which is a nervine. I've used hemp oil, or what most people would consider CBD oil. Found benefit with that for some patients. And to me, it's like whatever's safe and whatever works is what we're going to do. And give them for that. I've used turmeric, I've used ginger root. Some of the herbs are difficult to get children to take, but we're helping those, and we're not putting their lives at risk, and we're not risking them committing suicide by using those things. So, those are God's herbs, and He made them for a purpose, and He made them for a time period in our life. He's provided everything we need. That's the way I feel about it, and that's why I feel there is such amazing benefits with herbs. So benefits of preventive medications do not exceed placebo. Topiramate is the only Food and Drug Administration FDA approved medication for migraine prevention in those 12 to 17 years of age. But the guideline committee noted that the clinically meaningful outcome are still in doubt. So literally listen to this, folks. The only drug that is approved by the FDA for medication treatment of prevention of migraines in 12 to 17-year-old children, or young adults, whatever you want to consider them, the clinical meaningful outcomes are still in doubt. So the FDA approved a drug. It's the only drug approved for that age category, and they still doubt that it's clinically meaningful, that it helps them at all. There's your FDA, folks. So when people say, oh, hemp oil, CBD, it's not FDA approved for migraines or any condition, when we talk about it, or passion flower, or we want to look at turmeric and ibuprofen. No, none of those are FDA approved. But guess what? FDA approval means nothing. It means nothing, folks. Right there you have it in the Lancet, the only FDA approved drug. The FDA approved it when they didn't have substantial evidence to say it's actually effective. Going on though, amitriptyline in combination with cognitive behavioral therapies appears to reduce migraine attack frequency and associated disability, but amitriptyline has FDA black box warning regarding the suicidal thoughts and behaviors. And I'll talk about the amitriptyline, and that's where you'd want to read the Pediatric Migraine Prevention First Do No Harm, Journal of American Medical Association from 2 years ago. So black box warning, meaning it could kill your child. I'm going to be straightforward, blunt with it. It could kill your child. Please don't do and use that drug. Your child is suffering. I know it. My heart breaks for the children. All right? I mean, just watching Porter's testimony, and this is one of my patients, and watching the mom's desperation in her voice while doing this video and doing this testimony, this isn't to glorify me. This is to hope and pray, or be the answer for the hopes and prayers of a mother and father who are looking for answers, and they don't want their child to be on a drug that could cause their child to think about suicide or act out behavior of suicide. So, and it's no better than placebo. So, commonly associated with migraine, including negative emotional states, overweight, low physical activity, poor sleep, exposure to tobacco, alcohol, caffeine. But counseling on those things, the evidence is poor, shows no benefit. And that's what the studies show. And I hope if you got a 5 to 14, since we're talking about pediatric, I hope your child 5 to 14 years old isn't smoking tobacco and drinking alcohol and needs a cup of coffee in the morning. So maybe you're feeding them 2 liters of Mountain Dew and stuff, and then therefore the caffeine there. But other than that, it's like, come on, people, kids shouldn't have that stuff. But poor sleep, insomnia can be caused by brain inflammation. And the reason I say it, brain inflammation is one of the factors that drives migraine headaches. And again, upper cervical misalignments, poor nutrition, poor gut health drives inflammation in the brain. So those are some factors outside of even the spine that can drive the causes, the triggers that lead to the inflammation and the tissue damage and the blood vascular changes around the brain that would lead to the suffering and pain, the migraine. So we got to get rid of those triggers. That's what I would say. But none of those things really helped. I mean, being overweight, which would, you think about it, if you're inflamed, if you're hurting, if you're in pain, you don't want to go out and outside and be physically active, so low physical activity. Well, those things, sleep problems, low physical activity, and even obesity can be driven by inflammation and pain and suffering that you don't want to go do things. Porter was in bed for 28 days, for God's sake. So it's like, she needs to be more physically active. No, she's got a migraine right now and she can't be physically active. Like, so, but that is why counseling on those things don't work, because they're not the cause. They're typically going to be an effect of the underlying cause that's causing the migraines, that's leading to the inactivity, which leads to obesity and poor sleep and etc. So hopefully you guys follow me with that. So it goes on here. One big statement here I think we need to highlight is, without better quality evidence, the prevention of migraine will remain an intractable challenge for too many children and adolescents. I would agree. I would agree completely with the Lancet that we have no drugs. People should realize that, and they should go see somebody who actually says they're trouble. And so I'm going to step out there and say, listen, I can help. And I want to help. I want to see less children suffering. I want to see more boys being able to play baseball rather than sit and lay in bed. Here's another one from the Pediatric Migraine Prevention First Do No Harm Journal American Medical Association editorial. I think it's a really good statements in here. Let me pick out a few. They showed participants in 2 medication arms had adverse events, more adverse events like suicidal behavior and things like that than placebo, worrying some, but no better benefit with the drugs. And they say, however, it would be a disservice to children. This is an interesting quote. So here's the sentence first. Let me reread it, and I'll read it word for word. Participants in the 2 medication arms had more adverse events than those in the placebo arm, worrying some that we might do more harm than good with our prescription pads. No, that's exactly what that means. Placebo, drug, or drug. Okay, that's basically 3 arms of the study: placebo, drug, or drug. Guess what? Drugs had adverse events, and they weren't better than placebo. So it worried some people, worried some doctors that have a good common sense mind on their shoulders, head on their shoulders. Guess what? It said, well, if they're not better than placebo and we're increasing the risk of a child committing suicide, maybe we're doing more harm. Yeah, that's exactly what you're doing. All right, this is me getting a little frustrated here. But this physician says, however, it would be a disservice to children and adolescents with migraines to conclude that the CHAMP study that we as physicians have nothing to offer them. No, you don't have anything to offer them. Be honest with people. Literally, the Journal of Neurology, American Academy of Neurology says there's no drug that works better than placebo. But they do ignore this. So in this article, they actually mention that it may be possible to achieve this using supplements that have strong safety records, and evidence of efficacy in migraines, such as riboflavin. All right, so strong efficacy in migraines, riboflavin, and strong safety records. Why aren't physicians at least doing that? If they don't want to be a disservice to their patients, then advise the child use riboflavin and no drugs. Like, that's what they should do, I think. So, but another great read. I'm going to go to Facebook here real quick to see if I can answer any of the questions. Crunchy Mom. My son gets terrible migraines from gluten and corn. This started with toxic mold exposure. Mold would cause major gut disturbances, immune activation in the gut. Mold, you gotta strengthen the basically heal the permeability of the gut. So leaky gut, intestinal permeability problems is what would be driven by mold, and then you become more and more allergic to those things. So yeah, and inflammation in the brain driven through those things. So phenomenal. What do you think about zeolites like Zeotrex for Global Healing Center? I need to reverse his multiple food allergies. Also, alpha gal. Also as alpha gal. So I'll have to look up, I'll be honest, 100% honest with you, alpha gal. I don't know what that is. Probably wouldn't know once I know the clinical condition. But the Zeotrex, the Global Healing Centers, I don't know who they are specifically. The zeolites, I think there's way too much. It's like the lack of zeolite in your diet is not the cause of the majority health conditions that our children are dealing with. Zeolite supplements may be beneficial in detoxification pathways, those types of things, but your pathways, it's a binder. If your pathways aren't opened up, if you have poor digestive health, if you have poor liver function, lymph function, immune function, you could literally send somebody into an inflammatory immune response. by using these supplements, because they do have metals bound within them, and if they're on the surface of that binding element, that zeolite exposure just to that, your immune system recognizing it's there can activate an immune response against it. So you could have an inflammatory cytokine storm, an issue from that. And the reality is, I tell people, like, you can put all the zeolite binder you want. You can pour activated charcoal into a sink that's cloudy and murky, and it's a binder. It'll bind what's in there. But if your drain's not opened up, guess what? You ain't detoxing. So you've got to get a system in place. You've got to get the systems of the body in place and functioning before you start a detox. Like, truly. And the reality is, the majority of patients talked about, like, here's a not detox specific, but a young woman telling me today about her improvements. She's under a month of care. She just went through her first cycle since starting care. So she had her first period since starting care. She literally told me every single period she's ever had, like, the grandparents are like, we'll take care of the children while you're on your cycle. Heavy menstrual bleeding. So a lot of times she thought these migraines and these issues were driven by hormonal disturbances, but we've worked only on her spine, nothing else. I literally told her, if money's no option, we'll test your hormones, we'll test your foods and your stool, and we'll go ahead and start the chiropractic care. And I said, if you want to take it in bite-sized chunks and work in a stepwise process, let's get the foundations of your health down. I want you to eat better. I want you to focus on that, which she understood what eating better meant. So she started eating a little bit better, but really she's already doing well. And she tried, but it was chiropractic. She told me the only thing that has significantly changed in my life so far is only the chiropractic care. She's like, and I had zero migraine. She literally said I was literally waiting, and literally she'd like wake up and be like, okay, when's it gonna start? When's the headache? And she went through her entire period without a single migraine headache, and all we did was chiropractic care. And what I tell people is the function of your nervous system, removing any misalignments in the spine, improves brain to organ system communication, which improves function. So if your liver and your kidneys aren't functioning well, you know what? Make sure your spine's in the proper alignment. You don't have a neurological, physical, structural, neurological stress on the system that alters the ability for those systems to function properly. My detoxification pathways work efficiently and work well to where I don't need to spend a bunch of money on supplements like zeolite and things, because guess what? I have the best detoxification pathway there ever is and was ever created, and that is your liver, kidney, and lymph system that functions well because I'm in alignment, because I'm giving my body the right raw materials and nutrition, and I'm not ingesting toxins. So for that, Crunchy Mom, I would say zeolite is not an answer for that situation. I wouldn't use it. You have much less expensive binders that you could use. If zeolite was like for the mold, you got a lot better binders that are less expensive that you could use, like activated carbon, or even bentonite clay, things like that, to help bind the mold. But you got to get out of the mold. You've got to get rid of the source first. Like, that's the best recommendation I could ever give, any doctor could ever give. So wow, gelatin sensitivity, alpha-gal, got it from the gelatin in the flu vaccine. Yep, injection of protein or other molecules definitely cause sensitization. We know that. NIH, National Institute of Health, has admitted that flu vaccines can induce and cause sensitization of food proteins, thus causing food allergies. In the presence of an adjuvant, you inject somebody with the vaccine that has an adjuvant, in the presence of an adjuvant plus a whole protein from leaky gut, in the presence of those two things combined, you could further increase the risk of food allergy development. So it doesn't have to be what's in the vaccine or what's in that massive stimulant of your immune system. It needs to be just the two present. Kitty, what's up?
Try not to touch or move that.
Touch or move that?
Yeah, it's very sensitive, so we're getting a...
Whenever I move it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Kitty says, what's the best way to give herbs to little kids like 2 years old? Rub it on their belly. Any other ways? Rub it in their belly is a really good way. You're going to get less bioavailability, less potency at that moment in time. Any other ways? I mean, my kids, you form their palate. I really, really strongly believe, like, best case scenario is you literally form a child's palate. We took pictures of my little girl. She's like 8 months now, Ren, and first time we ever gave her a lime. And we were literally like, oh, you know, we got our phones out looking at, like, okay, is she gonna give that bitter face? No bitter face. She's just like, no big deal. I'm like, dang it. We wanted that comical bitter face. No, we didn't get it because, you know, what my wife ate, you know, it literally you improve their taste buds, they improve their palate to enjoy those types of foods through what mom eats. So that's where it begins. But my kids love herbs and stuff like that. You know, we'll sweeten them up, or we give them a treat afterwards. We just, you know, we've got droppers of elderberry and different things at home. We've got chocolate chaga, you know, mushroom elixir that they like. So we have the ones they really like, and then I'll just sneak in the ones that I want them to take if there's something going on or extra, like astragalus during the tick season, you know. I want them to take that kind of stuff to help boost their immune system. So we just have them take it, or we mix them in with like the elderberry elixir since they really, really enjoy that. So we mix the stuff in, you know, mixing it with honey, mixing with juice. You can take an alcohol elixir and you can actually put it in water and let it not necessarily simmer. I don't want you to boil it, but I want you to use the herbs, let them. Basically, it'll evaporate off the alcohol, then it becomes less harsh, but you're still going to have that bitterness from those herbs, and the bitter is actually really good. Bitter is better. It's really, really good for us to have bitters in our diet. So what I do is typically, if you do give them juice, then you can mix it with a natural juice. You can mix it with honey. You can do it that way, and you know, if you want to alcohol evaporate off the alcohol, you can do it that way. But we typically mix it with some sort of juice. We'll oftentimes use like an ascorbic acid, vitamin C water that has some tapioca sugar in it. We've used that type of thing to mix it in. My wife gets these natural electrolyte drinks that have like an orange flavor to them, no artificial stuff and that kind of thing. So we use that stuff to kind of give a carbonation to it. We'll mix it with kombucha. I'll mix it with the Numas here, like coconut water. So that's the way we help our children consume the herbs. Aaron, while Doc look into magic mushrooms for migraines. Yes, philosophy. I have, Aaron. Not a path I wanted to discuss at the moment, but absolutely. Thank you, Aaron. Also have this gene, medical medium, heavy metal detox smoothie worked. Looking through some of these. Narissa, battling health. Does it feel like this is my underlying issue for my current adrenal fatigue situation? My family had an MTHFR gene mutation. We don't detox. You do detox. People, please stop and just be. You don't detox as efficiently maybe with an MTHFR gene mutation, but that just means you need to adhere to a strict lifestyle more than somebody else. And you can upregulate the expression. If you didn't methylate at all, you'd be dead. Okay, so the gene mutation means you have one inherent blockade or inhibitor of being able to function at your best, but it doesn't mean you're locked into that. So, you know, I think the idea of this MTHFR is way too blown out of proportion, and I take issue with it because it really kind of locks somebody into this idea that, oh, I have that, now I'm, you know. I mean, the upregulation of methylation through the consumption of cruciferous vegetables is actually amazing. And even if you have the MTHFR, eating those things significantly increases detoxification pathways and things like that to improve methylation. And supplementing on top of that with like a methylated B12, can of folinic acid, things like that can help, but sometimes aren't even necessary if somebody adheres strictly to a very high nutritious diet. In elimination of toxins, you're going to maybe detoxify slower, but you're still going to detoxify. So, Kitty says he's working on clearing parasites with wormwood is strong. Yes, wormwood is one of my go-tos. That and black walnut hull, clove is another one. So those are like my big favorite parasite cleansers. So. Where do I start if I'm not detoxing, Carrie said. Start in my office. Start with lowering inflammation. Start with figuring out what the triggers are for underlying health issues. And you have to. I actually think I put it together, and I was like, I want to start explaining this. So, I don't know if you guys can see this. I'm almost look at it here on my screen. So I was putting this together for somebody the other day. So you have stressor at the top. If you needed to in the future, you can pause that. Stressor at the top, you have nutritional or toxins ingested, chemical toxicity triggers. You have immunological triggers. You have neurological traumatic. You have infection in the nervous system, or you could even have toxins in the nervous system. So you've got to figure out those immunological, those neurological, those chemical triggers, and then you have emotional situational stressors. Those are triggers, which trigger inflammation. Inflammation then triggers and causes the tissue damage. The tissue damage then results in your depression, your migraine headache, your Alzheimer's disease, your cancer, your cardiovascular disease, your thyroid dysfunction, all those things. So if you see that, so if you want to look at the cause, you look at what is the stressor. A proper physician, the right physician, is always going to look at what are those triggers of chemical, neurological, immunological, or emotional stressors, and what are the stressors you can actually change and alter, and what are the ones you can fix, and what are the ones you can reduce. Figure out those before you really start detoxing. Detoxing comes after setting a foundation for digestive health, for neurological health, for immunological health, because even then, once the foundations are laid, like I was trying to get at with this young woman who told me today, fantastic testimony 1 month in, menstrual cycles, no migraines, menstrual cycles much easier. We didn't have to do hormone testing. We didn't have to do all that stuff. So that's where she kind of went in here. And I said, let's back up a little bit. So let's lay a foundation. I mean, she had very strong evidence that her spine was a primary cause because of a misalignment in her lower back, where the sympathetic nervous system goes to her reproductive system. She also had atlas misalignments, so we fixed those in reference to the migraines. And all of that, just the chiropractic foundation. She has literally said this was the easiest period she's ever had in her entire life. Lay those foundations. From there, now that neurological stress has been, the structural, neurological, physical, neurological stress is removed, she is now detoxing better. She is digesting better. She's absorbing nutrients better. Her genes are functioning better, because stressors turn on genes that are a positive effect when you're in fight or flight maybe, but are negative over the long term. So it actually can turn on and off certain genetic expressions. And they've seen this with hypertension and cancer and things like that, with sympathetic and neurological stress responses drive genetic alterations into the future. So I appreciate everybody being on right now. Thanks for tuning in. Please share this, especially if you know somebody that has a child dealing with pediatric or childhood migraines. Let's help them. So share the truth. Don't just like it. It's the only way we save lives. Peace out, everybody. Have a great day.